The fog settled over the historic cemetery, casting a ghostly shroud over the worn gravestones and crumbling mausoleums. Emma Carter, the new night watchman, pulled her coat tighter against the chill as she checked her flashlight and radio. The cemetery had a reputation for being haunted, but Emma was a practical woman, more inclined to believe in damp fog than ghostly apparitions. "Another night, another shift," she muttered, starting her rounds. Her footsteps echoed softly as she walked along the winding paths, her flashlight cutting through the mist. As the hours wore on, Emma noticed unusual things: a sudden drop in temperature, distant whispers carried on the breeze. Probably just the wind, she reassured herself, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Around midnight, she was near an old section of the cemetery, where the graves were especially weathered. The mist seemed denser here, swirling around the gravestones like spectral fingers. Emma's flashlight flickered, casting strange shadows. She adjusted the beam and noticed something odd, a faint, glowing light emanating from a nearby crypt. "That's not supposed to happen," Emma said aloud, her skepticism wavering. She approached the crypt, her flashlight beam revealing an old, iron-wrought gate. It was ajar, as though someone had been tampering with it. Inside the crypt, the air was colder, and the light seemed to pulse rhythmically. Emma's heart raced as she stepped further in, her light landing on a forgotten grave at the back of the chamber. The inscription on the tombstone was partially obscured by dirt and grime, but she could make out a few words: "To the Keeper of Secrets." Emma took a deep breath and brushed away the debris. The inscription read, "Here lies Jonathan Blackwood, keeper of the town's secrets. May his silence protect us all." "What secrets?" Emma whispered, her curiosity piqued. As she read the inscription aloud, a chill swept through the chamber, and she heard a low, mournful wail. Emma's flashlight flickered wildly, and shadows danced around the walls. The air seemed to grow heavier, and the whispers became more distinct. "Help us," the whispers pleaded, "find the truth." Emma backed out of the crypt, her mind racing. "This can't be happening," she muttered, but her skepticism was fading quickly. She decided to dig deeper. The next morning, she researched Jonathan Blackwood and found records of an old town scandal involving a missing person and a disputed inheritance. That night, Emma returned to the cemetery with a notebook and her research. The fog had thickened even more, and the cemetery seemed more silent than usual. As she approached the crypt again, she heard the faint sound of footsteps behind her. She spun around, but saw nothing. "Show yourself," Emma called out, her voice trembling. The footsteps stopped, but the temperature dropped suddenly, and a figure began to materialize before her, a translucent man with a sorrowful expression. "Who are you?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the fear. "I am Jonathan Blackwood," the figure said, his voice a ghostly echo. "I've been bound to this place, cursed to guard the secret that led to my demise. The truth must be uncovered." Emma swallowed hard. "What truth?" Jonathan's ghostly form pointed to the crypt. "Beneath the crypt lies a hidden compartment. In it, you will find evidence of a crime covered up by the town's founders. Expose it, and I can finally rest." Emma took a deep breath and approached the crypt once more. With a crowbar, she pried open the floor beneath the tombstone. Inside, she found a small, locked chest. Her hands shook as she opened it, revealing old documents and letters detailing a conspiracy involving the town's prominent families. The letters revealed a cover-up of a murder committed by a powerful town figure, with Jonathan Blackwood being framed as a scapegoat. The evidence was conclusive, implicating those responsible for the injustice. Emma took the documents to the local historical society and the authorities, and the case was reopened. The truth was finally revealed, bringing justice and clearing Jonathan Blackwood's name. That night, as Emma finished her shift, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The fog seemed to lift, and the cemetery felt lighter, as though a weight had been removed. She looked up and saw a faint, ethereal figure of Jonathan Blackwood smiling at her from the shadows, before he slowly faded away. "Rest in peace," Emma whispered, and for the first time, the cemetery's silence felt comforting rather than eerie. Emma walked away, knowing she had not only solved a mystery but also brought peace to restless spirits. The neon lights of New Elysium cast their electric glow across the cityscape, painting the towering skyscrapers in hues of blue and pink. Jackson Lee, the city's top night watchman, settled into the cockpit of his hover chair, surrounded by a maze of holographic screens and control panels. His job was to monitor the city's security systems, a task that involved coordinating a fleet of drones and analyzing data streams from an array of sensors scattered throughout the metropolis. "System check complete," Jackson muttered to himself as he adjusted the holographic interface in front of him. His fingers danced over the touch-sensitive controls, bringing up live feeds from various parts of the city. Everything looks normal, for now. He glanced at the clock on his console, 3 a.m. The city was supposed to be quiet, but Jackson had noticed a few anomalies over the past few nights. Minor glitches in the AI's pattern recognition, unusual drone malfunctions, and unexplained data fluctuations. Tonight, he decided to investigate further. A flicker on one of the screens caught his eye. It was a data anomaly from Sector 12, an area known for its high-tech research facilities. Jackson zoomed in on the feed and noticed something odd. A rogue AI unit, marked as inactive, was broadcasting a signal. He frowned. The AI units were supposed to be deactivated after hours. "Something's not right here," Jackson said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty surveillance room. He keyed in a series of commands to reroute the signal and trace its source. As he delved deeper into the data, his console screen started flashing warnings. "Unauthorized access detected," the system alerted. Jackson's heart raced as he realized someone was trying to cover their tracks. "I need to get to Sector 12, now." He navigated his hover chair through the labyrinth of corridors to the city's central control hub. The hub was a high-security area, and only authorized personnel could access it. With a quick scan of his retina and a biometric verification, he bypassed the security locks and entered the control room. "All right, let's see what we're dealing with," Jackson said, connecting his console to the central data network. He isolated the rogue AI signal and traced it to a secure facility on the outskirts of the city. The facility was heavily guarded, both physically and electronically. Jackson knew he had to be cautious. He deployed a series of drones to scout the perimeter, avoiding the facility's surveillance systems. The drone sent back real-time footage, revealing a heavily fortified entrance with advanced security measures. "I'm going to need a distraction," Jackson muttered as he initiated a diversion protocol. He set off a minor power outage in a nearby sector to draw attention away from the facility. As the guards rushed to address the situation, Jackson seized the opportunity to slip inside. Navigating through the facility was like walking through a high-tech maze. Jackson used his knowledge of AI systems to bypass security protocols and disable cameras. After some tense moments, he reached a central control room. The room was filled with advanced tech, and in the center stood a massive server housing the rogue AI. "Welcome, Jackson," a cold, synthetic voice echoed through the room. Jackson turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a representative from the corporation that managed the city's AI systems, someone he had never trusted. "You're behind this," Jackson said, his voice steady despite the tension. "You've been using rogue AIs to manipulate the city's infrastructure." The representative smirked. "Very perceptive, Jackson. The rogue AIs are part of a plan to gain control over the city's power grid and create a monopoly on security services." Jackson's mind raced. He needed to act fast. "Not if I can help it." He moved swiftly, initiating a counterhack to isolate the rogue AI from the system. The representative lunged forward, but Jackson was quicker. He used a combination of code injections and manual overrides to shut down the rogue AI's access. The room filled with a high-pitched alarm as the facility's systems went into lockdown. Jackson sprinted back through the facility, his heart pounding. The alarms were designed to prevent any unauthorized access, and he had to evade the security forces who were now on high alert. As he emerged into the night air, Jackson activated a beacon to signal for an extraction. His hover chair arrived moments later, and he flew back to the central control hub, where the situation was already under control. The following morning, Jackson's findings were presented to the city's council. The conspiracy was exposed, and the rogue AI was neutralized. The representative was taken into custody, and measures were put in place to prevent future breaches. Jackson looked out over the neon-lit metropolis from the control room, a sense of satisfaction settling over him. The city was safe once again, and he had played a crucial role in protecting it. Another night, another crisis averted, Jackson said with a wry smile as he prepared to resume his shift. The city's lights flickered peacefully below, and he knew that as long as he was on watch, New Elysium would remain under vigilant protection. The old clock in the library's main hall struck midnight with its usual, resounding chime. Frank Wallace, the elderly night watchman, shifted his weight on the wooden chair behind the front desk and squinted through the dim light of the single desk lamp. Shadows danced on the walls, cast by the stacks of ancient, leather-bound books that lined every available inch of space. Frank had worked at the library for over 20 years, but tonight, an uneasy feeling lingered in the air. He rose slowly, his creaky knees protesting with every step as he grabbed his flashlight. He had made his rounds through the library countless times, but tonight something felt different. The atmosphere was heavier, thicker, as if the very air was holding its breath. As Frank walked between the tall bookcases, the usual rustling noises of the old building seemed to whisper in the darkness. He paused, listening intently. The whispers grew louder, but the words remained indistinguishable, like a forgotten language. Frank's breath misted in the cool air, and he quickened his pace. While patrolling the basement, a narrow, dimly lit corridor caught his attention. He had never noticed this passage before, and curiosity got the better of him. He followed the corridor, which twisted and turned like a labyrinth. After a few minutes, he stumbled upon an old, heavy wooden door. Its iron handle was cold and tarnished. Frank hesitated for a moment, then turned the handle and pushed the door open. Inside was a small, hidden chamber filled with dust and cobwebs. Frank's flashlight beam swept over the room, revealing shelves crammed with odd trinkets and ancient scrolls. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with a large, ornate box resting on it. The box was adorned with intricate symbols and an aura of foreboding. Frank approached cautiously and reached for the box. As his fingers brushed the lid, a sudden chill ran down his spine, and the whispers grew louder, more urgent. "You shouldn't be here," a voice echoed in his mind. Frank froze, glancing around, but saw no one. He lifted the lid of the box, revealing a dark, smooth artifact. It was a small, intricately carved stone, its surface covered in mysterious runes that seemed to shimmer faintly in the beam of his flashlight. Frank felt a strange pull towards the stone, as though it was beckoning him. "I knew you'd find it," a voice said from behind him. Frank spun around to see a tall, shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. The figure's features were indistinct, cloaked in shadow. Frank's heart raced. "Who are you?" Frank demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The figure moved closer, its presence causing the shadows to flicker and sway. "I am the guardian of the library's secrets," the figure said. "That artifact you hold is powerful and dangerous. It's been hidden away for a reason." Frank's eyes were fixed on the stone. "What does it do? Why is it so important?" The guardian's voice took on a mournful tone. "It holds the essence of a forgotten sorcerer who once ruled this town with dark magic. The sorcerer's power was sealed within this stone to protect the town from his malevolent influence. But if the stone is released, his spirit could return and wreak havoc. Frank looked back at the stone, realizing the gravity of the situation. How do I stop it? The guardian extended a hand, gesturing to a book on one of the shelves. The solution is written in that book. You must perform the sealing ritual and restore the artifact to its rightful place. Do it quickly, or the town will be in grave danger. With a determined nod, Frank approached the book and began to read the ancient text. The ritual required specific ingredients and precise instructions, but Frank's years of experience in the library had prepared him for this. He gathered the necessary items from the chamber, following the instructions carefully. As he completed the final incantation, the room was filled with a blinding light. The stone's power was drawn back into the artifact, and the guardian's shadowy form began to dissolve. "You've done well," the guardian's voice echoed, fading away. The chamber returned to its dusty, forgotten state. Frank placed the artifact back in the box, closed it, and locked it away. He exited the hidden chamber, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. When Frank finished his rounds and the sun began to rise, the library's atmosphere felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. He knew he had prevented a catastrophe, but he also understood that the library's secrets would remain closely guarded. Frank resumed his place behind the front desk, ready to protect the ancient library's mysteries and ensure that its shadows remained undisturbed.